Welcome to The Art of Growth and our series on business instincts. This is Jim Zartman, and today Joel Hubbard, Suzanne York, and I are going to talk about leadership and how the instincts show up in our leadership styles. Before we get to that, this Thursday, June 24th, Joel is doing an Enneagram and Parenting webinar. There's certain subjects that we think work better in a live context where people can ask questions than on a podcast. And so you can go to www.theartofgrowth.org and get tickets to this Thursday, June 24th, Enneagram and Parenting webinar. If you want some help finding out your kid's Enneagram type, you can go to www.theartofgrowth and have them take our free youth Enneagram test. This will be a really helpful seminar to help figure out how to use the Enneagram to connect and communicate with your kids. So sign up at theartofgrowth.org. There's also only 2 weeks before the next round of group coaching starts at the beginning of July. This is where we take small groups of just 5 people and we go through our coaching process together. It is deep, it is rich, and you do not come out the same on the other side. So you can find out more about that or sign up at theartofgrowth.org. But for today, we want to get into this subject on the different instincts, as we've been doing this instinct series, and how they show up in leadership styles and in business. How the values of our dominant instinct can direct decision-making, and why we need each other to bring some balance to our teams so everyone can thrive. And maybe have some paper nearby to jot down Suzanne's mic drop at the end of this episode. So let's get into it.
Hi, my name is Joel Hubbard.
I'm Suzanne York.
And I'm Jim Zartman, and we are in this series around business instincts. So how the instincts show up in the workplace. And we wanted to talk a little bit about leadership. We wanted to talk a little bit about how an instinct can show up in leadership, because instinct's a lot like type. It has a lens, it has a value system, it has a way that it sees the world. And we want to talk about how that could influence how you show up as a leader. We have all 3 instincts present, with me being the social, Joel being the sexual, and Suzanne being the self-preservational. And we've all been in different leadership roles, and we've probably seen some of this show up. And we are just some examples of it. Like, obviously, we can't speak for everyone. This will show up differently for different people. As we saw throughout a lot of the panel series, that your stack actually really influences how this might show up. But generally speaking, what some of the concerns could be, what some of the focus might be from each of these instinct perspectives, if someone is in a position of leadership, how that might show up.
I think we should begin with the self-preservation, or
Sure.
the way we use it in business language is preserving instinct or preserving energy. Mm-hmm. Suzanne, for you, how has that shown up in your roles of leadership, and what do you see as been some of the features and characteristics of that instinct, but also what are some of the strengths, and what have been some of the maybe weaknesses or challenges of that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really like thinking about my experiences through the lens of my instinct, because it does help me see certain tendencies that I wasn't really present to before recognizing that self-preservation is showing up in all areas of my life. For me, when I think about preservation, it's not just about myself. It is about anybody that I'm interacting with. So I think about a team. When it comes to leading a team, I do have a tendency towards helping the team create systems and security around, if we do this well, it will be from having had some repeatable processes that we can rely on to then free up our energy to spend it on innovation. If we're, constantly spending our energy on doing kind of the basic things without making it more efficient, then I feel like we're burning resources. And so what I like to do is help put that foundation in place, create some systems and planning so that people can then focus on the real work of the team. I also look to make sure that the team has a sense of stability and security in their roles, so people know this is my role, this is the goal we're going after, and they're not having to spin around that, like, well, what are we trying to do together, and what's my contribution to it? And so in one-on-one conversations, it's important to me that people have a sense of security in their place on the team. Again, so that then the mental energy doesn't go towards questioning their role, it goes towards doing their role.
And I'm hearing in that, which is really going to be helpful for us to sort of have a framework around what does it mean to have dominant preserving instinct, is besides you being a type 3, which that shows up, which
Sure.
you mentioned the word efficiency.
Yeah.
But there's also, which you've mentioned in there, things like sort of practical know-how, which is one of the strengths of the preserving energy. You've also mentioned somewhat of a sense of process or predictability, something that people can rely on.
Right.
You can feel that in the preserving instinct, which is it's how do we do this? It's the sort of farming instinct, the repeatable processes instinct. How do we do this in a way that gives the organization a sense of balance, safety, a sense of feeling comfortable in that space? Your second instinct, which what we discovered in our whole instincts series, is that the first two really make the biggest difference. So even though you have the leading one, you have the first and second kind of create that. And you mentioned team, which
Right.
is very much a part of that. Your second is social.
Correct. Yeah.
So I can see how both of those are playing in there. And I think leading from your dominant instinct, you also have to start to think about what's my second one, because generally that's also going to be the context in which I use the dominant instinct inside that context.
Right.
And so I can see how both of those are playing within this. So you created teams, but then processes, repeatable processes, efficiencies, and so on.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense with the stack, because then your next question was, what are some things that have, I would say, detract from a leadership role? And it's unclear for me if it's the preservation as the first, or really the fact that my one-to-one or sexual is the third. I think for me, the risk-taking is one that I constantly need to check in on. Like, am I willing to put the team at risk with a really bold goal? Or what's my degree of comfort with risk-taking so that we can advance what we're doing? So I think that's something that I continually look at is in my leadership style to say, can I allow myself or the team take on a risk that my preservation type might say, hey, that could deplete us of resources, or that doesn't have a guaranteed outcome. So there's something around risk for me that's coming up. Yeah.
We have talked to you, the three of us have talked
Yeah.
before about you saying, oh, I can feel that I'm starting to over-prepare. I'm starting
Yes.
to, So there's a little bit of that preserving instinct kicking in there that kind of counteracts it, sort of like, well, we'll figure it out. There's a lot that we don't know that we'll figure out as we move forward.
Right.
And that would be more akin to the pioneering, what we're calling pioneering/sexual instinct.
Right.
That kind of just jumps first and looks later.
Yeah. And I think part of that, the preparing piece is I don't mind going with it. And then if we come upon a moment where like we have to figure something out, I'll think to myself, oh, I kind of wish we had known that, because then I could have, prepared for it. And then
Right.
I'm like, oh, but that's the whole point. You can't. So yes, there's the willingness to go along, but then there's usually the, oh, well, we could have done it a little differently if we had known. And that's
Right.
something that just letting go of that.
Absolutely. But that's also one of your strengths, because
Yeah.
then in the future, the next time around, when you can anticipate this is coming around, you're not having to reinvent the wheel. Whereas the pioneering energy might be like, let's just jump and figure it out. Whereas the preserving says, well, we've already figured that out, right? Because that showed up in a previous situation.
Right,
So
right.
that part doesn't have to be, we don't have to wing it. We can actually repeat this and create a system around that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful kind of counterbalance sometimes to other instincts as well.
Yeah, and I hear in that sort of we talk about nesting within that instinct. And what nesting ultimately is creating a structured environment for the life that needs to occupy it to thrive.
Yes. Yes.
That is the essence of that energy.
Right.
And so it needs to understand, like, well, how do you build a good nest? Like, how do you build a structure in which the life can thrive? Which means we're not constantly reinventing the wheel. We're going, okay, there is a tried and true way to build a structure that the plumbing can go in a certain way. The lighting fixtures have to be designed a certain way. We need the internet working. Yes, you need those things, but actually how does the organization structure? How do the roles and responsibilities, like how do we make the life, which is the work, the business in this sense, thrive? Because the environment serves the function of the business.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to think about it. And as I talk with different clients and people about the degree of change that everybody's contending with, one thing I hear loud and clear is people do want a degree of stability.
Totally.
And they're not asking for the whole thing to be stable, but if everything feels chaotic, then it's really hard to have a sense of grounding and confidence. Yeah. And so I do think that I bring that to a group at times where I can say, hey, this part over here is totally stable. Let's rely on this right now so that we can put our energy, and energy comes up a lot for me, but put our energy towards the thing that is shifting and not have to waste energy on something that's
excellent.
Is stable.
That is so true. And I do feel that with you too. That's such a great value for leadership, is the ability to manage anxiety within the space. Good leaders know how to do this. It's okay, right, there's anxiety coming up. And the preserving energy does naturally know how to do that. It's an instinct to how do we create a place, a nest, as Jim was talking about, like it's comfortable, a nest that is safe, a nest where productivity can take place, where we can start moving forward. And so that's the brilliance of that. The analogy that I've loved to use is you got a playground. On the playground, you have to have a fence. You also have to have the different elements there, the different toys, the different structures, all being really grounded and in good working order.
Solid.
They got to be solid.
Yeah.
If a kid goes on a seesaw and the seesaw is not locked to the ground, the sort of middle fulcrum part is not locked to the ground.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Exactly.
A lot of the kids are going to be off of that thing. That's not fun. That may be chaos. That may feel more like chaos. So that's the sort of preserving. It comes in and says, how do we create a kid's playground that has a fence to protect the kids, that's rock solid, that kids can be sure that the thing is going to hold their weight and not be shaky, that if they fall, they land on something soft. All of these things are thought through by the preserving energy. And then after that, then you get to the sexual energy or the pioneering energy. And that's are we having fun? Are we climbing? Are we taking on new risks? And that can play within that environment too and find itself safe in that world. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I think of the benefits of that instinct and what it really contributes to a team is a sense that we're going to be okay and we can do the thing we need to execute on because we're operating from solid ground. Like, we know how much resources we have because that gift allows us to know and account for what resources we have to work with to build the thing we need to build. It knows who is responsible for what, so the thing actually gets done. There's so much of the organization and the execution that is aware of what do we have, what do we need to do, and how do we need to do it. So we use this analogy sometimes of that pioneering and settling energy. And yeah, it's great if somebody can go up and discover a great island, for instance. So that sexual energy may go out and discover a great new island that no one's ever seen before, and then they go onto the shores and stuff like that. But it's that preserving energy that goes, okay, a shelter should be here, a dock should be here, a lookout should be here, we need a plumbing system through here. It's going to actually have the capacity to organize those into more functional society, a functional team.
So this is fun, and we definitely want to focus on the leadership part of the gift, but at the same time say, as we're all saying here, is like, yeah, but all three are necessary, right? So it's not like the leadership gift is awesome and let's just run with that. It is awesome. It's got its power, that's incredible. But it also is very much interdependent on the others functioning and making sure that they're present as well.
Yeah. I love that image. You can't have a company with only one instinct.
Right.
And so there are moments when each instinct needs to take a turn at the wheel.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of growth and I think self-mastery to recognize this moment is not for my dominant instinct to shine right now. As much as I think that's the one that can fix everything. Because I think all of us think that our dominant instinct is there, it can fix anything that shows up. We use that. It's our tool. It's like everything's a nail because I got a hammer. But in some cases, it's, oh no, this one I need to pull back a little bit and let the other instinct do its job. It's a different tool and it's a different problem, so it needs a different tool. Yeah.
Yeah. If the preserving energy is not present, then you do not have the structural and the resource management to actually execute the goal. If it is too dominant and the others are not present enough, then you may not lean into the risk of actually excelling the business forward.
Right.
And you may not know how to manage and organize and have a relationship between all the people who have to make these things happen like you would have in the social instinct. So it really is a necessity to have all these things present. And also that they are, I don't like the word balance. I've been really pushing away from the word balance because it feels like you're always going to fall off an edge. But like a good chord structure, like a harmony, a harmonious interaction and relationship with the different notes of the instincts. And so that would be something that I think if it was not enough of it, you would have there's certain issues for sure. But if there's too much of it, you may not move forward. If you don't have it, you're not going anywhere. And if you have too much of it, you might not get to the next thing. And I think those are the ways that I see that kind of playing out in the
I think that's
self-preservational.
what's the best about the playgrounds, kids' playgrounds.
Yeah.
What's the best about it? A parent looks at it and goes, is it safe? That's the first question you ask when you're a parent of a young child. It's the first question you ask. But the kid looks at it and they're analyzing a number of things like, is it safe? Yeah. There's more of an intuition around that. There's just a sense like that feels safe. But then also, is it exciting enough? Is it pulling me enough? Is it, boy, that climbing structure is awfully high. It's huge. And so they get like, and then at the same time, they're drawn to it. Yeah. And then who else is there? Are there other kids there? Are they playing? And are they having fun? Yeah. And so it's a good point to say all three have to be somehow working together. There's not a balance. There's just they're all there. They're all present. Yeah. So the harmony illustration I think is a good one.
Right. Well, and something that would really help teams advance and companies advance is to have the common language around this, because oftentimes what I see is each person is trying to lead from their instinct without the language of this. And they're getting, you've got three people trying to drive the bus. When if we instead could say, this moment for this thing that we're doing, I really need to pull in, the pioneering energy.
That's so good, because we've done this with the triads, with the centers of intelligence, where we've talked about, you may need a meeting where you have some heart time, where everyone checks in together and they have a little bit of connection so that you realize that there are humans that are working on this project together. You need head time where you strategize and you think through what do we need to do, and you ask questions, you test ideas. And you need body time where you can execute and assign roles and like who's going to do what. And it's the same way with the instincts. Like, okay, is it time for some preserving energy? What do we need to organize? What do we need to execute on? Like, how do we do this? We need that sexual energy to go, what are the new things that we could do? What are the risks we could take? How do we like really immerse ourselves into this thing so we go have deep understanding of it and experience of it? This is where the tangibility happens in that sexual, that emergent energy. And then the social energy of like, well, who's involved and how do we make sure that this benefits everyone, and then it benefits our customers so that the customers are cared for and the employees, like that heart that comes from that. And so, it's like letting these different things take the lead. Yeah, we're really diving into it. This is really good. So I want to hear about the sexual energy. Like, Joel, what do you think, what does the sexual energy really bring to a leadership role?
It's definitely the pioneering end of it. Like, okay, let's bring some change. That instinct naturally starts to feel restricted, feels like it's getting tired, bored when there isn't enough change happening. There's a sense at which point, like, we've been doing this too long, we need change. If the leader, like in my case, is unaware, which I've been most of my life unaware of that instinct, then it can become, something that creates problems too, because change for change's sake is not good. It's disruptive. But change that is, this is actually going to help us as an organization. This is going to move us forward. That's very, very important to have that. And we can say more about it, but it needs to be also how to process that through the taming and the preserving instincts. So, self-preservation and social instincts. Because when it's done through those, then it's a win-win. Then the organization can move forward. But what it does naturally is to kind of pick up on folks, we're running out of food here. We got to go to the other. We got to leave this place we've settled and begun farming, and we got to go out and go find some new kill.
Yeah.
And that's just always going to be in the one with that as their dominant instinct. So I think that's one of the big ones. The other one is when there is something new, that instinct knows how to soak in it, immerse itself in it, to know it from the inside out. It's not so much about I know all the details, I know all the facts. It's I know it from an experience. It's very much embodied and experienced. It's like I know it from the inside. And it wants to be able to understand the entire thing and to connect it to the rest of their lives. So that's one of the strengths I think it has, is to immerse itself in there. It's also very convincing. It can convince other people, inspire them to come along
Attract
for the
them in,
journey,
yeah, draw
attract
them
them.
in,
Like,
yeah.
come on, this is going to be exciting.
Yeah.
And so I found myself at times over leveraging that sometimes. Oh, trying to use it to an extreme. But when I'm at my best and I'm using it, it is fun to inspire people and see them catch that vision and be like, oh yeah, we could do that. So I think that's the other strength it has.
Yeah, I think the external, the outward-facing aspect of that energy is so beneficial for a company. It has to have that thing that's like, but we want to reach out and we want to reach the new people and we want to connect with new clientele. And it's like, yeah, we can have this great thing at home, but it's the energy that kind of pushes it externally and reaches out and says, like, look what we have. Like, we could connect with you and it'll be so much better when this thing that we have meets this thing that you are. Mm-hmm. And I think that energy is so beneficial for a company. If it doesn't have enough of that, often it can get too locked into what it is. It may get comfortable with like, well, we've got this one really great client. We have this one really great product. Because what it can see, it sees the possible. It could see like how good it will feel in my hand when we have this new thing that I'm dreaming about. And I think that is something that like keeps stagnation from happening.
Yeah.
The image that I have when you were talking is this idea of looking at the shoreline or looking at the horizon. It can help you look at the horizon.
Yeah.
Meaning what's out there, what can you get after versus what's right in front of you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think some of its weaknesses, since I asked you, Susan.
Yeah. Your turn.
The big weakness I mentioned is, the tendency to kind of need to change for change's sake.
Yeah.
Because you get itchy. You get bored. You need the new, the stimulating thing that's happening, the new thing that's happening. And so you can sabotage good things that are happening within the organization. You can we need to just scrap the whole structure. We need to change. We get a new, better model, better thing. And that can actually create more damage than what you intended going into it.
Let's rip out these swings and put this other kind of junk on here. But people like the swings. They need the swings.
And people worked hard to put the swings in place.
The swings are nice. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's a great illustration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this in organizations where that change for change's sake or the pioneering does have people, in some cases, might describe it chasing the next shiny object.
Yeah.
And then the people who have to figure out how to do it, there is whiplash or there's some exhaustion that sets in of like needing to then figure it out. And I think there are some people that would prefer to at least have had a chance to. Prepare is not the word I want to use because it's the word that comes to mind for me.
No, we'll go ahead and use it. That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, had I seen that coming, we could. But at the same time, maybe this is the flip side of it where it's like, again, that confidence of it can be figured out. Let's just start walking.
Well, that's the confidence that, yes, pioneer. And I totally have that in me. It's like, I can, let's go. We'll figure it out as we go. But it does create, I think, you were kind of being humble about that, but I'm saying, I think that you're right about that question. If I had known, like I get that all the time. That was the feedback I heard for years and years, decades.
Yeah.
People saying to me, Joel, it's a great idea, but if I had known, if I know what you were trying to do, I could have participated. And for me, I was frustrated by that because I'd say, why didn't you participate anyways? Why didn't you just jump in and run along with what's happening? But that's because I didn't understand how the preserving mindset works and how the teaming mindset works. Mm-hmm. And those who have that pioneering or sexual instinct as their third, the repressed one, it is enormously hard for them to just jump in and just come alongside. But now that I see it, I can see how if I had started with, I have this idea and had the courage, because part of it is pioneer types tend to be afraid of telling people fully what it is that they are thinking about, because I feel like it's going to get killed before it gets a chance to, get going.
They're going to shut me down.
They're going to shut it down. Yeah. And so, if I had said, here's an idea that I have, and then heard the pushback, not as I'm trying to kill your idea,
Right.
but as that's a good idea, but here's what it's going to require. Here's what's going to be necessary. Then I could have said, okay, let me keep pushing that, and pushing it in the sense of not pushing it on them, but keep it moving forward through the process. Still going through the process, not going around it. Who are the preserving people? Who are the teaming people? How can I run it through them to ensure that this actually works?
Right.
I have a question about that, though, because one thing about that instinct and something that's in his gift is it can't always say, this is what it will be like when we get there.
Thank you.
And it
yes.
goes in that direction. And sometimes the gift of it
Very
is
true.
when there's if I would have known, or it seems like you're going this direction, if you can tell me what it's going to look like, then I'll feel okay about it.
Right.
But that's not always possible, because it's kind of like so much of the entrepreneurial energy of, I'm sure a lot of listeners, sort of that business energy that pushes towards the new thing, is you're pushing towards something that is somewhat undefinable. The problem is it stays undefinable if it doesn't include the other energies.
Okay.
But it can't.
Yeah,
It can't
I like that.
always be defined right off the bat. So
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
yeah. So I kind of want to blend
Well,
that.
I so appreciate you
Okay.
saying that. That is so I appreciate that, because that is, yes, in the early stage of that intimating, and that's what they feel. It's like an intimation of, I sense something. I'm not entirely sure what that is.
Yeah.
That's what would definitely prevent me from saying anything, because it sounds stupid. Like, what do you get to, I have a sense of something. Well, what is that? What does that look like? What do you
Right.
mean? And so then that would get shut down, and then I'd feel like, that was stupid. And then I would knock my own idea down, because it was, clearly I couldn't come up with what that is.
Yeah.
But the intuition or the intimation, the sense of there's something there I'm vaguely seeing, perceiving, but there's a strong internal sense of move toward it. Right. And that's the pioneering energy. It's not afraid of that. It's like, ooh, let's go towards that. There are some fears that kick in that definitely keep me from sometimes really reaching that. And that would be another podcast I'd want to talk about, how to really push into the strength of your instinct, because we're all kind of hitting it, but not really hitting it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been my challenge in the recent year, has been push it all the way into it. But now push into it with the other instincts. Don't go against the instincts. Work with them. And I think what you just said, Jim, is extremely helpful and insightful, is working with them as the part of the process until it becomes...
Yeah, and it's super helpful to have that energy and then to include the others. The only problem comes is when we overly moralize. We talk about moralizing the type. We over moralize our instinct. And someone's like, well, I have to know every single thing before we proceed. That isn't probably going to work out. But if you're like, no, we just have to jump, and it doesn't matter if we know where it is, like the net will appear. It's like, well, that's not really fair either.
Right.
Because, and which is, I feel like sometimes this is where the social instinct comes in and can bridge those energies a little bit, because there is a bit of that bridging the energies.
That's a good, then talk about that as one who has that as your dominant instinct. Because I do see that. I do see how the social does act as a bridge sometimes. It's a really good insight. Like, it can play off of that, because it, depending upon which is your second too. I imagine if you had social and self-pres, it would probably show up differently than you are as a social followed by bisexual.
Yeah. Yeah, because even as we're talking about this, Suzanne's energy, and we were discussing the preserving energy, and then we're talking about that pioneering energy, like the whole time I'm going, but these are so needed, and this is how I can see them working together. And I even threw in comments about like them working together. Like, this is what I'm doing the whole time, because this is how the social instinct is working.
Yes, yeah.
It's going, well, how do the different energies kind of come together? Because if the whole thing is going to happen, it's going to necessitate all of these different moving parts. And this is how I could see this moving part working with this one, and this one needs to kind of come forward, and this one dances forward. And because I appreciate structure, but I don't think in hierarchical structure. I think in functional structure. So which energy needs to kind of lead at that moment, which energy needs to kind of come forward at that moment, is sort of the tape that is running in the back of my mind. And because of that allies piece of the teaming, who can be trusted to do what, who cannot be trusted to do what. So there's always sort of the checking in with not just the structure, not just the direction, but the motivations, the capacity.
Is it like
capabilities?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it like are you for the team or are you not for the team? Is that what you're kind of? Yeah.
Yeah, like are you going to sabotage the plan?
Yeah.
Like are you going to be the bully on the playground? The playground is safe. The structure is safe. But is the atmosphere with all the kids safe? Or do we need to take out that person who could actually be hurting other kids even though the equipment's safe?
Fascinating.
So that is the thing that the social energy is really tuned into, is how do we make these components work together? So I think of that as like the high side of that.
The teaming, really smart energy there. That's one of the strengths for sure, is you're describing as, the ability to tune into that really quickly. Like yours, it's like mine. That's my second. I can see it show up, but yours is like you're always reading that. Like, well, how's the team doing? What's happening in that environment? Yeah.
Yeah. But there's certainly a low side of that as well, which is kind of like, if I trust the people, I don't worry as much about the structure. And that could be because of that whole social, then sexual, being that next, and then the self-preservation, preserving energy last. I think if preserving energy were second, there would probably be, yes, it's all the pieces together, and then I'm paying more attention to the structure. So depending on like that, I think the stack matters a lot with a social type. So where they might be like, we got the right people, and we can just go for it. Versus someone who's preserving second, we got the right people, and here's how we need to now organize these people. Yes.
Yep.
But I think it has the instinct to allow different energies to emerge when they need to.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing in all of this and what's coming up is that, for an idea to have an impact, it really needs all three. It needs the instigator, the integrator, and the implementer.
Ooh. Okay, so good. You got to say it again.
I know. So for an idea to have impact, it really has to run through the whole life cycle. It needs the instigator, the integrator, and the implementer.
That's really good.
So be the leader you are, because all is needed.
So thank you so much for listening. If you would like us to do some training or coaching in your organization around this subject, you can reach out to us at theartofgrowth.org. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes on this subject matter or all the goodies we have planned for this year. If you leave us a review on iTunes, it really helps people find the work, find the show. You can follow us on Instagram at just Art of Growth. And a reminder to go sign up for the parenting webinar as well as group coaching at our website, which I have mentioned enough so far, but I'll do it one more time, www.theartofgrowth.org. But for now, my friends, may you own that you are different. May you know that different than is not less than. You have gifts to contribute, and you want to grow in your capacity to welcome the gifts of others. When working with others, let there be a chord of sweet music as these different types and different instincts are integrated together so we can thrive. Because as Suzanne said, we need the instigator, the integrator, and the implementer. Grace and growth, my friends.